Okay, we are working on differences, absolute and relative difference. So the absolute difference, so if here's an example. If I'm going from, let's say, from 8 to 12, right, then the absolute difference, it's just subtracting them. 12 minus 8, and that would be 4. The relative difference is the difference relative to the number you came from. So the difference is still 12 minus 8, but then you divide that by 8. And so that gives you 4 over 8, and that's 0.5. And then the relative difference is usually written as a percentage. And so that is a 50% difference. And in this case, there's a 50% increase on 8 to get to 4. Like you add 4 to it, but 4 is 50% of 8. So let's see which choice this is. Absolute difference describes the size of the relevant. Absolute difference is the actual difference between the compared value and the reference value. Relative difference describes the size of the absolute difference in comparison to the reference value and can be expressed as a percentage. I'm liking B. Okay, so absolute difference describes the actual from a relative to a new. Relative difference is the size of the absolute difference in comparison to the new value. It can be expressed as a percentage. That might be it. Absolute difference is the from a reference value to a relative is the size of the absolute difference. So we're going to use B as the actual difference. Okay. Give an example that illustrates how to calculate the relative difference. So you had 60, the reference value is 55. No, that's not relative. Relative is a percentage. If the compared value is 50 and you're referring to 45, then the relative difference is 50 minus 45 over 45. So the way that I like to think about it is that it's the new number minus the old number divided by the old number. Decide whether the following statement makes sense or is clearly true, or does not make sense, or is clearly false. Explain your reasoning. I decreased my caloric intake by 118%. Well, I only have 100% caloric intake, so I can't subtract more than the total amount of what I had. Let's see which one references that. The statement does not make sense. My new caloric intake would be negative 18% of my previous intake, and a positive caloric. Okay, the statement does not make sense. My new take would be negative 82%. No. The statement no. So it's A. Decide whether the following makes sense or clearly does not, or does not make sense or clearly is false. Makes sense or is clearly true, or does not make sense or is clearly false. Explain your reasoning. We found that rare cancers are 700% more common in children living near the toxic landfill than in the general population. So let's talk about what 700% means. 700% means, so if I have 10, here's an example. If I have 10, then 100% more, right? 100% more would just be 10 more. 200% more would be 20 more, right? So if I had 200% more, that would mean a total of 30, and that would be 3 times as much. So 200% more means 3 times as much. And continuing in this pattern, 700% more would mean you would have 8 times as much, right? So 700% more than the 10 would be 70 more than the 10, which means that you would have 80, and that is 8 times as much as what you had. This is possible. You can have 80 times or 8 times what you had before. So the statement makes sense because the number of rare cancers found in children living near the text is 8 times the number of rare cancers found in the general population, which is possible. I like this one. The statement does not make sense. Well, the statement makes sense because the number of rare cancers is 7 times. No. Okay, so it's A for the 8 times. Here we're just going to use some calculator. Express as a decimal and then express as a percentage. When you're expressing as a decimal and you want to change it to a percentage, you need to move the decimal place over 2 places. We're going to round. 10 divided by 13 is 0.7 2 decimal places. So 0.7 2 decimal places, 0.77. 0.77. And then we write that as a percentage is 77%. 1 over 8. 1 over 8 is 0.125. You're rounding to 2 decimal places, so there's 0.13, which is 13%. Let's move the decimal place over 2 places. 11 over 4 is 2.75. And moving that over, that's 275%. A certain candidate won 382 electoral votes in an election out of a total of 460. The number of electoral votes won by the candidate is blank percentage of the total votes. So here it's 382 out of 460. Get the calculator out. 382 divided by 460 is 0.83. I think it wants us to round to 2 decimal. No, round to the nearest tenth as a percentage. So here we got to be careful. So here we've got 0.83.0, right? So this is 0.830, I believe it's 4, right? We move the decimal place over 2 places, move it over 2 places, 83.04, and round to 1 decimal place is just 83. Find the absolute change and the relative change in the following case. So the house went from 302,000 to 153,000. So new number minus the old number, 153,000 minus 302,000, negative 149. Negative 149,000. The relative change is new number minus the old number, and it's in reference to the old number divided by the old number. So then I just need to divide this by 302, and it's negative 49.3. So to recap, that was negative 0.4933. Move the decimal place over 2 places and then round to 1 decimal place. Negative 49.3%. Same thing. Absolute change 1237 minus 2408. That's the absolute change, and the relative change is 1237 minus 2408 all over. The old number is 2408. Let's put that in the calculator. we're going from the absolute change 324 minus 700. The relative change is 324 minus 700 all over 700, and write that as a percentage. And then multiply that by 100. Let's do that one. So that one's going to be 324 minus 700, which should be 376. And then we're going to divide that by 700. And then multiply that times 100. And then we're going to round negative 53.7%. The gestation period of rhinos, 487 days, is blank percentage longer than the gestation period of pigs. So we'll do the percentage difference. So this is in reference. So this is the reference number, right? And so it's 487 minus 115 in reference to 115. This number should be more than 1, right? So 487 minus 115 divided by 115 is times 100 to make it a percentage is 324.5%. Longer than the gestation period of pigs, right? And this makes sense that this number is more than 100% because this is more than 2 times as big as this. The main span of a bridge is blank percent shorter than the main span of bridge B. So we're comparing bridge A to bridge B, and so we're talking about 4,300. So this is the reference number. So it's 2,100 minus 4,300 in reference to the 4,300. Let's do that. 2,100 minus 4,300 equals that divided by 4,300 is that. So that's like a 51. So and then times 100. So that's like a 51.2% shorter. 51.2% shorter. Right, and you don't need to include the minus sign here because they're already saying shorter. Will is 25% taller than Wanda, so Will's height is some percentage of Wanda's height. So Will is taller than Wanda, so he is 100% of Wanda's height plus another 25% of Wanda's height, right? So for him to be taller than Wanda, so when we say that he's 25% taller than Wanda, that means that he is Wanda's height plus another 25% of Wanda's height. That in total is 125% of Wanda's height. %. So you're just taking this and adding 100% to it. The wholesale price of a TV is 40% less than the retail price. So you have the retail price, and then you're going to take off 40% of the retail price. That is going to leave 60%, right? So if you have 100% of the retail price and you take off 40% of it, then that leaves 60%. And so 60% of the retail price, writing this as a decimal, is 0.6. times the retail price. 60% of the retail price. Taking off 40% leaves 60% of what you had before, which means that you could just multiply by 0.6. The retail cost of a TV is 60% more than its wholesale cost. Therefore, the retail cost is blank times the wholesale cost. So this is the opposite. The TV is the price of the TV. I should say the retail price of the TV is the wholesale price plus 60% more than that, right? So it's plus 60%. So this is 100% of the wholesale price plus 60% of the wholesale price means 160% of the wholesale price. So then you would multiply by 1.6. Right, so here we're learning that when you're taking off a percentage, you do 1 minus this percentage, right? So here we did 1 minus 0.4 is 0.6. Here we're doing 1 plus 0.6. The total after-tax cost of a laptop is $1,548.74. $1,548.74. That's the price after the tax rate. So you have the original price, right? So the retail price, we'll call it R. So you're taking the original 100% and adding 0.053 times R, and that gives you 1548.74. So 1.053 R is the after-tax amount that you're doing to R, and that equals $1,548.74. Now I'm solving for R. I'm multiplying by 1.053. In order to get R by itself and get rid of this 1.053, I'm going to need to divide. So I'm going to divide both sides by 1.053, and that will tell me what the original retail price is. 1548.74 divided by 1.053. We're going to round to the nearest cent. $1,470.79. 1470.79. Determine whether the following claim could be true. Explain your answer. Restaurant prices have increased by 114% in 20 years. That's perfectly okay. That means it's more than double. You added 100% and then another 14%. So like if I had $100 20 years ago and I added 100%, which would be another 100 plus another 14%, which would be 14. The new price would be $214. That's perfectly okay. So not A, yeah, B, which is possible. That's perfectly okay. Explain the following claim could be true. George's computer is 700% faster than Nancy's. That's perfectly okay. That means it's 8 times as fast, right? So the claim could be true if George's computer is 700% faster than Nancy. Then it is 8 times Nancy's computer speed, which makes sense. That is okay. Let's see if the other ones are okay. No. Yep. Assuming the given information is accurate, determine whether the following statement is true. Provide an explanation. The class is 70% women, and 40% of the women have blonde hair. So blonde women comprise 70% times 40%, which is 28% of the class. That is absolutely true. 40% of the women in class, and women comprise 70%, hence the blonde women comprise. That makes sense. Let's see if anything, no, it is true, yeah. That's right. So the way that you can test it, if you have 100 people, 70 women, and then of those people, 40% of these people are blonde, not blonde, then that is 28, and 28 out of 100 is 28%. Assuming the given information is accurate, determine whether the following statement is true. Provide an explanation. 50% of the hotels have a restaurant, and 50% have a swimming pool. So 90% of the hotels have a restaurant or a swimming pool. So that's false, because some could have both. The statement is not true because some of the hotels with a restaurant may also have a pool. Right, so the point is that there may be overlap. There may be overlap. For instance, all of these hotels, right? 40% of these hotels may have a swimming pool. At a particular college, 60% of the undergraduates are female. If 2,700 women attend the college, how many total undergraduates attend the college? Okay, so we're assuming that 60% of the total is 2,700. So the total is 2,700 over 0.6, dividing both sides by 0.6. 2,700 divided by 0.6 equals 4,500 people total. All right, hope it helps.